Hi friends, my name is Kim. Welcome to Healing Cottage Homestead. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm so happy to have you with me today. Today we are going to make an oldie but a goodie, one of my favorite meatloaf recipes. And I have been seeing people who look like they're making something very similar to my meatloaf recipe, which makes me very territorial. So I decided I was going to make my meatloaf for you myself. So what I'm seeing on TikTok and on Instagram is French onion meatloaf. It's topped with cheese, topped with sauteed onions, just like my meatloaf. But I do use barbecue sauce in my meatloaf, so maybe that is something different. I haven't looked at the actual recipe that they use. I'm looking for my kosher salt. I want to make some roasted potatoes. Before I forget, let me start the oven and get it preheated to 400 degrees. And I'm going to make some roasted potatoes with this, and I'm just going to roast these potatoes along with the meatloaf at the same time. So it's doing one job in the oven at once and doesn't take any longer. I think this salt will actually work. This is non-iodized salt. And we want to just put a good amount of salt on these potatoes. We rubbed them in olive oil, and that'll give them a good crust. So I want to just rub it around a little bit. And I think that'll be delicious. And we'll go ahead and set these aside. Well, I'm actually going to go ahead and set them in the oven while we put together our meatloaf. And we're going to start with a pound of ground beef. I use the 90-10. If you like juicier meatloaf, you can definitely use the 80-20, but I am someone that likes to use the ground sirloin 90-10. It makes for a leaner meatloaf, has less fat, but like I said, if you want something more moist with a little bit more fat, go ahead and use that 80-20. And I am going to add some garlic. We know that I love garlic, so we're going to add about a tablespoon of garlic. And then I'm going to cut some onion. So we will dice our onion for inside the meatloaf, but then I actually slice onion and saute it for the top of the meatloaf. And that just gives it a little extra something, something special. I think half of an onion will be plenty for this meatloaf with just 1 pound of meat. And then we'll use that other half to top it, like I mentioned previously. If you don't have onion, you could use onion powder or dehydrated onion. You could use garlic powder if you don't have garlic. Looks like I missed a piece. Now, I don't use breadcrumbs in mine or cracker crumbs. I actually use oats. And you can use either the quick cook oats or you can use old-fashioned oats. Mine are quick cook. And I forgot I need an egg. We'll go ahead and put just 1 egg in. That's going to bind your meatloaf together. Let's give this a little bit of a mix and see how we're doing so far. I actually think a fork would be better than this spoon. to get this mixed together. So let me grab a fork. So I think I mentioned to you the last time I went to the doctor that I was not trying to lose any more weight. I was satisfied with where I was, but I got on the scales this morning and I actually have lost more weight. So I'm down to 171, which I don't want to get lower than that. 170 was my goal, but just based on my extra skin, that is something that I'm a little bit vain about. I think you might understand that, those of you who are going through this journey with me, and I know that I've heard from several of you who either you or your spouse are going through this weight loss and diabetic journey of reducing your A1C. And so I had not planned on losing more weight, but I did get sick again. I think I told you the last time when I hadn't made a video that I had gotten strep throat. Well, don't you know, I got strep throat again in less than 30 days. So I don't know what that's about, but hopefully it stops. I did hear from someone who said once you get it, you're prone to it, and I really hope they're lying to me. That's all I have to say. So let's add some salt and pepper to our meatloaf, and you want to be generous with your seasoning. And now I'm going to add some ketchup. I would say about a half to 3/4 of a cup. It depends on how moist you like your meatloaf, but I like to add barbecue sauce, and my favorite barbecue sauce is honey barbecue sauce. And so I'm going to add that as well. I know a lot of people top their meatloaf with barbecue sauce, but I like to top mine, like I said, with cheese, so I don't top it with that. And I did forget my secret ingredient, so one moment. We're going to add just a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. There we go. And we're going to mix all this together. And I know a lot of people will go in with their hands and mix it together. Sometimes I do that. Today I don't feel like doing that, so I'm going to use this fork. And I had just picked up my Kroger order, so my meat was very fresh and it's easy to get my fork through. It's not too cold. You know how sometimes I have mentioned that my refrigerator will get the meat a little, or get everything a little frozen. Sometimes the cheese is a little frozen, sometimes my vegetables are a little frozen, but this is not too frozen. I'm adding a little bit more barbecue sauce just based on the color. It looks a little red and I want it to look a little bit more brown. And I also want to smell that barbecue sauce a little bit. I am a sight and scent cook. I like to be able to judge things by how they smell and how they look. And so let me give you a look at this. Is what our meatloaf looks like so far. We're going to go ahead and put that in our loaf pan. If you have a meatloaf pan, go ahead and use that. I used to have a meatloaf pan. I loved it, but it actually rusted. And so I had to get rid of it. But if you don't have a meatloaf pan and have never seen one, it looks just like a regular loaf pan, but it actually has an insert that lifts the meat out and lets all of the grease from that meat drain off. And it's wonderful. But because I use a 90-10 ground beef or ground sirloin mixture, there is very little fat or juice that comes off of my meat. So I think we'll be okay. So we'll just flatten this out in the pan. And I am not going to cover it. So I like that crust that develops on top of the meatloaf. And so I'm not going to cover it. I'm going to go ahead and put it in my 400-degree oven. I can already hear the oil, pardon me, from the potatoes that are sizzling a little bit. I don't know if you can hear that, but I love that sound. So while those are roasting, I'm going to cook this meatloaf for about 55 to 60 minutes. Then I'm going to take it out and check for doneness. And if it's done, I'm going to top it with the mozzarella cheese, put it back in the oven and let that cheese get bubbly and nice and brown. And then I'm going to also saute some onions so that we can put on at the end. So we'll come back in about 55 to 60 minutes. Okay friends, our meatloaf and potatoes are done. I actually put the meatloaf, the cheese on and put it on broil so that it would brown up a little bit. Is that not beautiful? So we're going to cut up into this, and we sauteed some onions. I like mine a little brown, so you make yours how you prefer them. Smells delicious. You can tell it's moist, and it's probably not going to stay in one piece. So let's see what would be the best thing to get it out with. Let's try this. Hot. Top it with some of those sauteed onions. All right, let's cut into the potato. They're nice and tender on the inside, crisp on the outside. Meatloaf is very moist. Cheese is ooey gooey, delicious. Get a little bit of that sauteed onion on top. Cool it down just a hair. Friends, I don't know what that French onion meatloaf tastes like that is going around TikTok, but I can tell you that this is the most delicious meatloaf you're ever going to make. That barbecue sauce adds a sweetness because I use the honey barbecue sauce, and that sweetness of the onion, the richness and saltiness of the cheese, the garlic in the meatloaf. It is a killer combination. And it is right in the wheelhouse of what we need our nutrition information to be. So I will give you that. You're looking at, with the meatloaf, and you're looking at a good inch slice of meatloaf, 525 calories, 30 grams of protein, 18 grams of fat. So that's not bad. You've got to remember that that's part skim mozzarella. So that really helps us out on the fat category. And we use 90-10 beef, so we have less fat. Only 88 milligrams of cholesterol, so under that 100 milligrams of cholesterol that I try to stay in to be well balanced for that. 16 grams of carbs with 1 gram of fiber, so you're looking at 15 net carbs. The potatoes have 180 calories, 8.6 grams of fat because we used a lot of olive oil to roast them. 0 milligrams of cholesterol. They do have 23 grams of carbs with 2.2 grams of fiber, so you're looking at about 21 grams of carbs plus your 15 grams of carbs from your meatloaf. So we're looking at, what are we looking at? 36 grams of carbs for our total, and that's below the 45 grams of carbs we try to stay under for a meal. So this is definitely comfort food that your whole family would love, that is diabetic friendly and something that's going to help you lower your A1C and lose weight at the same time. So if you enjoyed today's recipe, give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel, Healing Cottage Homestead. I post videos when I can, every Tuesday and Friday. I'm getting back into a regular routine, friends, and I promise you, you're going to see more videos. But I post those on Tuesdays and Fridays at 5 p.m. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I would really, really appreciate it if you would subscribe. It helps the algorithm so that when people search for diabetic-friendly recipes, they can find me. And my whole goal, which I've shared with you previously, is not just to help us realize that we can eat foods that taste good as diabetics, but for us, our families, to realize that they too can eat what we eat and enjoy it just as much as they would as something that wasn't labeled diabetic friendly. I really enjoyed our time together today, friends. I hope you did as well, and I look forward to cooking with you again soon. Take care.